Hello and welcome to another World of UX podcast. I'm your host, Darren Hood. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. A special welcome to those of you listening for the first time. We're going to cover another brief subject on tonight, just something that I keep coming across these posts on social media. It's picking up steam, just like a few years ago. Every time you turn around, somebody was posting an image saying which is better, A or B, and they post these images with these very slight differences and act like they're solving some huge problem, and then saying that it was UX, and it was not. It was all UI, and these things were all the rage among people who really didn't know any better. And so this is something that's happening again. And for the first time ever, I don't recall seeing it, not to the volume, I'm seeing it now, where people are saying that they're trying to clarify the difference between UX and UI. Now, here's part of the problem with that. And this is the problem with anything. And I'm going to tell a little bit of a story before we get into it. Prior to 2011, I've been doing this work since 1995, first and foremost. I have seen all the ebbs and flows. I've seen all the terminology. I've seen the inflation. I remember what we were called in 1995. I remember what we were called in 2000. I remember what we were called in 2005. I remember what we were called in 2010. There's a lot of people who have no knowledge of this history. There are people who do not, you talk to them, you find out they do not respect or understand any of the fundamentals. They don't understand any of the history. They don't understand what's going on outside of FANG companies. And I heard somebody today, now they're calling them Mango. I don't care what they call them. It's the same thing. They're the same companies, and UX is usually really suffering in those environments. I make all of these statements. I do. I make a lot of statements, and a lot of people don't like what I'm saying. They reject what I'm saying. They don't consider I've been here for pretty much the whole thing. I know what's going on. I know what has gone on. And so when I speak, I'm speaking from a point of reference that a lot of these loud people on social media don't have. Darren, they have a right to say something. This is not about what somebody has the right to do. There's a lot of things we could do. The question is, should we? Prior to 2011, there was practically no misinformation in UX, and in the name of putting themselves out there, misinformation has really taken over to the extent that user experience is now a discipline. Unlike other disciplines in the world, UX is the only discipline that I can think of, and I know about a lot of them, the only discipline in the world that has been overtaken by misinformation, where now misinformation and people who embrace misinformation and people don't realize that they're spreading misinformation are really ruling today. They're in charge. They've pretty much taken over. And so this is pretty sad because, and I feel for people that are coming into the discipline, because they come in and there's this thing called anchoring bias. The first thing that the person hears, they assume that it's accurate, that it's true, and that it's trustworthy. And so people keep hearing different terms. They keep seeing certain practices. They keep seeing certain things, and they think that these things are accurate, and they're not. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Most notably, we're going to talk about, again, this thing that I keep seeing where all of a sudden people want to talk about the difference between UX and UI, and they actually don't know. So we're going to try to demystify what UX and UI is just a little bit. I'm not even going to get into this for very long today, and it's not really that complicated. And so we want to make sure that people understand it. So I'm going to share some of the posts with you. Then we're going to try to unmuddy the waters of UX and UI. I actually like that title better. We're going to unmuddy the waters of UX, UI, and hopefully bring some clarity. Now, again, I've been doing this work since 1995. Somebody else has been doing the work since sometime this morning. I don't know, I'm being silly. Who are you going to listen to? A lot of people come into the discipline, they don't have a filter. They don't know what to ascribe weight to, what not to. And they will trust anybody that knows more than them. And that's not really a good way to make these types of choices. So I'm going to share this information, and then you can go ahead and engage in critical thinking. You can give it some thought. It might not sink in for a year, but please know and understand, and God knows I'm used to that, telling people something and they don't listen for quite some time. So I'm used to that. That's not going to stop me. I'm going to keep telling the truth. I'm going to keep respecting the people that I talk to by giving them what they really need to know, whether they choose to listen or not, which is what we do in UX. We tell people what direction they need to go. We tell people how they should execute on a design, and they may or may not listen. And so that's where we live, and that's what we do. That's what the world of UX is about. That's how we live. That's how we operate. So even in the midst of UX, amongst the people who should recognize something that's more viable and embrace that, and they don't, we're still going to give you that information. So let's get into it a little bit. I'm going to share a few of these screens. Here's the first one. And this is a post that I saw on LinkedIn. Of course, this is one of those cases where it's important to blur out who it is, who said it is not important, what they said is. This person says, what is UI UX design? And they say that it's simplified for beginners when actually this person is a beginner also. They don't tell you that because some people, they just want a following. Some people, they gotta pump up their ego. And so they say things like that. This is not simplified for beginners. It's actually muddying the waters and making things worse. And now, look at this, 422 people liked it. 51 people shared it. God only knows how many people that was seen by. And everybody that's touched by this pretty much is going to be detrimentally impacted by what they see. And this doesn't even count how many people saw it. It doesn't count the impressions. And they go on to say a lot of people still confuse UX and UI, but then they actually, I didn't even show the whole post here, and they start to talk about all these different things. And they try to simplify it by saying UI equals the look of a thing and UX equals the feel of a thing. So they show the dashboard and the gauges in the vehicle, and they refer to that as the look. And then they refer to the person touching the steering wheel as the feel. Not only does this not qualify as an oversimplification or a simplification, I should say, it's not even accurate. When you look at the gauges in a vehicle, when you look at the dashboard, it is that. It is a dashboard. People are taking in information. They need to be able to read it properly. For those of you who might be curious and interested, one of my favorite books of all time, written by Alan Cooper, was a book entitled The Inmates Are Running the Asylum, which is ironically what's happening today. But when you look at that book, they tell a story early in the book about how there was a plane crash. And in this plane crash, one of the reasons when they went back to try to find out why the plane crashed and a lot of lives were lost, when they went to try to understand why it happened, the conclusion was eventually drawn that the plane crashed because there were elements in the cockpit, elements in the equivalent of what you see in this vehicle that people couldn't decipher. The pilots couldn't decipher it. The way that the information was presented was not digestible. It wasn't intuitive. And so, if my memory serves me correctly, they thought they were going one direction, they actually went another, and they had the catastrophe took place. So you say it's the look, but actually that was UX. Then you have the person with their hands on the steering wheel and they're saying that that's the feel. Well, UX is not just feel. And so I made an attempt. Somebody will say, well, Darren, why didn't you do something about it? It's amazing how people take the time. They assume things. They assume the voice and tone with which I speak. When they read what I say, they assume that I did or didn't do a thing. They really don't know anything. And that's another thing that plagues us today, because you got a lot of people talking about stuff that they have no idea about. Here was the reply for all the smart Alex in the world today. Here was my reply, of which, if I also remember correctly, the person came back and thanked me for saying that. I didn't get into anything else because I know what happens when you interact with people who they post things like that and then they start backpedaling. They feel they have to save face. I don't engage. I don't argue. I don't debate with anybody. I state the facts. And People who are wise, they treasure facts. They place value upon facts. Their ego is not squashed when they are confronted with facts after they said something that was inaccurate. Psychotic people have a problem with facts. Neurotic people have a problem with facts. Narcissistic people have a problem with facts. And these are the people that are usually running amok on social media. If you want to manage your psychological safety, you want to make sure that you learn how to identify these people and steer clear. But what did I say? Somebody had also already said, great perspective. No, it's not. So that person didn't know. I agree 100%, one person said. I feel for that person because now somebody created a problem for them and everybody, whether it's a teammate, a user, their customers, created a problem for all of them because they don't understand the difference between UX and UI. So I said incorrect. And I get in trouble. I get vilified for telling people the truth. And I'm about to speak it the same way that I was thinking it when I said it for the people who have a very difficult time putting together voice, tone, and written words. Not as difficult as people make it to be. And I told somebody the other day, if you take the time to digest the content and don't attach a voice and a tone to it, you'll find that when something is of value, you'll find you'll take it in without being offended and without feeling like somebody hurt your feelings and things like that. Do the emotionally intelligent thing and take in the content. Is the content solid? So I said, incorrect. UX is about way more than feel. It's about function. It's about affordance. It's about optimization of cognitive load. It's about findability. And it's about way more than that. And I just left it at that to give people something to think about. And when you tell somebody the truth, it's an act of respect. When you lie to them and when you try to get people to follow you, when you try to build a following at the expense of their own well-being, that's very disrespectful. And so even if there was a very passionate voice and tone behind it, it's worth it. I mean, if you were in a truck with somebody or in a vehicle, it doesn't have to be a truck. If you were in a vehicle with somebody and they were falling asleep, would you just lightly nudge them and ask them to wake up, or would you shake them? And so people don't understand, to use that metaphor, people don't understand. Get rid of the voice and the tone and focus on the content. That statement I made is true. And if somebody doesn't proceed the right way, they're going to continue going down the wrong road. And one bad bit of information actually leads to another, and that leads to another and another and another and another. And before you know it, a person has a forest of misinformation all wrapped up in the midst of their cognition, their cognitive elements, and that creates problems. And so we don't want that today. We want to grow the right way. And I hope and trust that everybody listening to me wants to grow the right way. If you're listening to this show, it's likely that you're actually at least thinking about it, whether you go that way or not. Let's look at another one. Staying on the same topic, of course, where somebody is trying to tell some people, they call themselves bringing clarity. And this one really is picking up steam. This one I saw at least 2 or 3 times where people were saying this. And again, you got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 people that are liking these things when people post it, and they're all in trouble because this is wrong. This is erroneous. When you tell the truth, truth never goes viral. This kind of stuff goes viral and everybody is in trouble as a result. They said, and they even said this in the narrative of the post. I just have the image here, but they said this in the narrative of their post. They said, we are making a mistake by saying UI/UX, while the truth is UX UI. I gave a similar response that I did on the other post. I said that incorrect. There is no such thing. I said both are incorrect, actually. There is no such thing as UI/UX, and there is no such thing as UX/UI. And one of the responses, and I'm going to remind everybody that's listening to my show about this also, from a grammatical perspective, when you use the slash, that means that the 2 elements on either side of the slash are interchangeable. So when you say UX/UI, or they're conjoined also, that's another thing that can be illustrated with the use of a slash. And these elements are not equals. UI and UX are not equivalent factors at all. They are not interchangeable factors at all. And so they thought that they were helping people. Really, they're just after a following. And you find out when you talk to these people, I don't care about a following. I mean, a lot of people don't listen to this show. A lot of people don't subscribe to this show. I don't get a lot of likes on the stuff I share on social media, but that's not what I'm after. I'm trying to help and I'm trying to foster the well-being of the discipline. When somebody has a problem with me, and I said it before, I'm saying it again. When somebody has a problem with me, they have a problem with my purpose. And they can't turn around and say that they're trying to do the same thing that I'm trying to do and then disrespect me. Something else is going on completely. So you can't do that. And a lot of people, they lack the wisdom of understanding and being able to identify people's character. In other words, they're not a good judge of character. When you're not a good judge of character, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to end up embracing somebody that you should have been running from. So this is an inaccurate statement. Let us illustrate that so somebody doesn't think that I'm saying that. I'm not saying either one of those things. UI/UX, wrong. It doesn't matter what you put on which side of the slash. It's an incorrect statement that misleads people. And we'll talk about that again in a bit. Let's go on to the next one. This is hilarious. Don't you love when people use images and they use them as examples, and sometimes they'll present it as if the people in the images are saying what they put on top of it and they turn it into a meme? Obama didn't, he's not this is just silly. All these people here in this illustration, this just doesn't work. But this person is trying to say that the UI/UX designer is bringing together user needs and company goals, and they think that they're shedding light. This is another person who, again, knows nothing about the history. They have no idea what titles we've had over the years. They have no idea. They haven't worked in UX enough to really understand. And a lot of people, that's why a lot of people today think that if they know Figma, that they know UX. You don't. User experience is a discipline that revolves around strategy. I said that in response to this post. UX is a strategy-oriented role. It has, and you're going to find this out shortly, we'll go over it again, I'll reinforce this again, UI is a moniker. It is a moniker, and I said this in one of my responses. UX is a moniker. It's really a nickname. There is no UX, so to speak. UX is a nickname or a moniker that consists of up to 250 methods, methodologies, techniques, deliverables, and all of these things are in our toolbox, or can be, up to 250 things. And we listen to the problem we're trying to solve. We try to decipher the problem that we're working on, and we decide which of the tools in the toolbox. Well, number one, how many tools do you have in your toolbox? And then you have to realize and try to understand which of the tools are best suited to address the problem that I'm working on. That's what UX is. Let's accept it as that. That's what it is. Somebody may not like what I'm saying. It doesn't change the fact that I'm telling you the truth. It doesn't change anything. So the UX person, back to this illustration, UX is already working on understanding user needs, and UX is already working on understanding company goals. As a matter of fact, and some of you may have seen the old Venn diagram that I created and have used in the past, the UX professional's job is to understand user needs, understand business needs or company goals, and then understand the constraints and find the sweet spot between the three. That's what the UX person does. We're not heavy on company goals or heavy on user needs. The UX designer, not the UI UX or the UX UI designer, the UX designer or the UX architect or the experience designer. Who cares what the title is? In general, we're already doing that. Some people are thinking, you know what? We need to start. I actually saw a post about this not too long ago. We need to start focusing more on business needs. And they were acting like they had a light bulb moment when that's what UX is. It's amazing how many times people try to present something as if it's new, and it's not. It's ages old, since the beginning of the discipline. So This image, again, it is incorrect, folks. So we need to be careful about what we do. There's another image. This is not the one. There's another image that's circulating, and it looks like this. And people are they're taking Jesse James Garrett's old 5 planes. They're trying to expand upon the 5 planes, and they're trying to say that this is the new elements of user experience. And what they don't know is that this image was created around 2012, 2013. And this other image just started circulating about 2 weeks ago. In August of 2025 is when it started circulating on social media. And it was this. They're saying, I have something new to show you. It's basically this. This is the same stuff with a couple of planes in different places. So this is, folks, no. There's people keep sharing misinformation about user experience, and they're doing everybody a gross disservice. We cannot do things like this. It puts the spotlight on the person that's sharing the information, but then it pulls everybody else into darkness. It pulls everybody else into an abyss. This is UX, and many of you have probably seen this before. I call this the landscape of UX. Sometimes we call it the 4 pillars of UX. When you hear somebody say UX, this is what they're referring to. This is the 250 different things, the methods, methodologies, techniques, and deliverables associated with user experience that we're talking about. When you say UX, you're saying these 250 things. And when you say UI, you're saying one thing, which really makes it out to be this: a big UX and a little bit of UI. That's why. They can't even be the same size if you were saying it accurately. This is an old post that I put on social media probably 4 or 5 years ago, and I'll read it for those of you who are watching. I know some people are watching on video and some people are just listening, but I'm going to read this. It says, anytime someone says UX/UI or UI/UX, I know there's already an inherent problem. And take what's about to come forth with a grain of salt. Why? Because the equation is very different. In reality, it's more like this: big, giant UX 50 point font, little UI 8-point font. Though people try to equate them, which is what they're doing when they use the slash, UX is greater than UI, folks. Therefore, it's impossible to represent such a conjoined acronym accurately for the good of the discipline. Please stop saying it, folks. Please stop saying it. So I said I was going to be brief, just a little oversight of what it is to look at UX and UI. We hope to demystify, to unmuddy the waters associated with UX and help somebody out there in the discipline. Are you new to the discipline today? I know it's challenging because you see all these job postings, you see people saying it all the time. You see people, you go to an interview, they're saying it. You look at articles, and they're putting it in their articles. None of this makes it correct. UX/UI is not a thing. UX is not UI. UI is not UX, and the slash doesn't do any of it any justice. If the discipline is going to rebound, we need to overcome this thing that keeps this snowball keeps getting bigger, but we need to overcome it. I hope somebody will accept it today. I hope somebody will embrace it. And as always, I'm wishing everybody all the best. So that's it for today, folks. Short and sweet. So until next time, this is Darren Hood, the host of The World of UX, thanking you for taking the time to listen to the podcast today. And until next week, happy UXing, everybody.